What up, friends? I'm not out yet, and today we're going to be reviewing MGMT's newest album, Loss of Life. This is the fifth studio album overall by American indie pop duo MGMT. Loss of Life comes after a pretty lengthy 6-year wait since their last record, Little Dark Age, which is widely considered by many to be MGMT's best. The textured and layered instrumentals, alongside very catchy songwriting on that previous record, was expertly done, and it's really interesting to see MGMT go in almost the complete opposite direction here. At least in terms of the sort of pop catchiness. This album in comparison is much more nuanced and subdued, almost feeling a bit like The Strokes' New Abnormal or even Foxygen's Seeing Other People at times. It's a fairly drastic change, but like the two records that I mentioned previously, they pull it off really well. It pushes what it means to be an MGMT album to its limit, and it does so while also delivering very heartfelt vocal performances, very intimate and well-crafted lyrics, alongside very warm instrumentals too. This is an album that rewards you sticking with it. After a fairly nostalgic and melancholic opener, we get to the first real song on the project, Mother Nature. To be honest, it's a great start for the album, encapsulating the themes of the project of looking back at where they were when they were younger and all the things that they thought they had to do with their careers, all the things that they thought they had to feel about, pop music and music in general, and just kind of flipping them on their heads. It's all about looking back and moving on from their previous life and their previous works. The light vocals and guitar combined with the sort of ambient synths here and there, it's very reflective on the group basically acknowledging where they were in the past but feeling like they need to keep evolving and moving forward. It's very bittersweet in a way, almost like they're bidding farewell to their younger selves. The raw lyrics of trying to keep our balance over zero while write the fairy tale for the rest of our lives are a great way of describing the struggle of deciding whether you should just replicate your past hits or actually stay true to yourselves and evolve. Dancing in Babylon is definitely one of the more anthemic and dramatic tracks on the album, if you could call it that, but it's still pretty solid. It sounds like an 80s power ballad in a way, with these very glimmering bass and guitar passages over a sort of melodic beat. It also has a very ethereal nature to it, especially with the duet-styled vocals and the addition of the piano. Both of these elements help keep it grounded and intimate and not go too much into that anthemic territory. The distorted synth and guitar moments after the chorus also help tie this song back into the band's more psychedelic angle as well. It's very pleasant to listen to, and the outro repeating line of "I want to tell everyone I know I love you" really bring home the themes of family and the duo kind of re-examining what's actually important to them. Next up we get to People in the Streets, by far the best song on the project. The bass work on this one is incredible, and the way it meshes with the guitar really highlight the album's sort of underlying themes of a somber sadness. The deep drums and overall progression really showcase how the band is kind of feeling worn down about trying to basically replicate their past successes and not really knowing where their current career has in store for them. Of course, there's also the pressures of life that they're facing too. The simple chorus of "learn from the people in the streets" also showcases how they're trying to slow down a little bit, try to take everything in, live in the moment, and trying not to, live too much in the past or in the future. This in addition to trying to do so even if it's hard with their current outlook on life or, they're feeling a bit too reminiscent in the past. The psychedelic influence on this one, especially in the latter parts of the song, I think also encapsulate a bit of hope that this album has too, as they're kind of breaking through this slog and actually trying to, re-enhance their life again. Bubblegum Dog is definitely one of the most upbeat songs on the project, and it's actually pretty fitting for the lyrics too. This more traditional sort of indie rock song structure is very reminiscent of the lyrics of the record, talking about how the band is growing more accepting of kind of normie tastes and, music and stuff like that. Before they were feeling very cynical and, pretentious about the types of music that they thought they had to enjoy, that thought they had to make, but now they're sort of finding the joy in the simpler things, the normal things, if you will. Not everything needs to be so experimental and groundbreaking, and I think the gritty guitars on this passage kind of reflect maybe sort of the anger that they're feeling about how they missed out on a lot of really cool things because they were so cynical and jaded about the average pop scene or the average indie scene that they just didn't feel like anything was good enough, but in fact there actually is a lot of really nice normie music out there. It's a pretty clever track, in all honesty. Next up we get to Nothing to Declare, and unfortunately this is one of the less interesting songs on the project, I feel. The lyrics are still pretty good, even if they are a bit redundant, especially with tracks like Mother Nature already appearing on the album and tackling similar themes. My biggest gripe though is the instrumental, which feels kind of uninspired or maybe just a bit too simple compared to a lot of the other instrumental styles on this record. It's just not very memorable, not straying away from the indie folk styled guitar, and the vocal melodies also just don't really go anywhere. It's not bad per se, it's pleasant enough, but it's surrounded by much more interesting songs. Now, with Nothing Changes, I find the deep and booming drums give this song a very demanding presence. The instrumental is impactful while still remaining grounded, and the vocals really sell the strained and desperate nature that the band is putting on display here. With lines like, "And I feel strange like I shouldn't be here," and "This is what the birds must have been squawking about right before the dream was ending, and maybe you'd heard if you'd stopped fucking around when it was time to stop pretending," they really showcase how, in the past they talked about, in some of their songs, becoming numb to just life in general as you become more famous, and I feel like with this song they're kind of acknowledging that that actually happened to them. Like the theme on display elsewhere in the project, this song in particular captures the sort of cyclical nature of a lot of what they talk about. They mentioned it in the past, how fame not necessarily corrupts you, but it can make you blind to a lot of these sort of simple pleasures in life, and they felt like that occurred to them. They feel that numbness, and they're struggling to get out. The horn segment during the outro is also a great way to express this futility, I find. Freddy's song, unfortunately, is very similar to Nothing to Declare for me. I really do like the lyrics being a very poetic description about him breaking through the numbness described in the previous song thanks to having his daughter, but the instrumental, again, just does not really do anything for me. It feels very basic for the project, lacking a lot of the texture that I thought made the other songs on the record more interesting. The next track, I Wish I Was Joking, is a better example of the more low-key moment on the project. It does have simpler instrumentation, but I find that the more psychedelic and distorted backing track on this song helps carry a bit more weight and also expresses the lyrics about being in limbo. He wants love, but he acknowledges that it probably actually won't help him all that much or make him any less sad, so it's this kind of dichotomy of, yes, I want love, but will it actually help? But it can't hurt, It's a fairly tongue-in-cheek song that pokes fun at their psychedelic influences and themselves as well, as they croon about wanting love, however we have the line, "Nobody calls me the gangster of love." The final track of the album, the title track, represents the cyclical nature of the record. The instrumental is a darker and more distorted version of the intro's instrumental, and the vocals I think really give off a sense of finality to the project, especially when they deliver lines like, "When the world was born and a life is ending, then you learn to love your loss of life." I think it's a very fitting way to end the project on this one, and despite also being a fairly simple song instrumentally, I think it's a pretty powerful one. This was a very different, yet also a very solid project by MGMT. True to the album's themes of wanting to avoid stagnancy and the numbness of feeling artistically trapped, I think their transition from psychedelic-infused indie pop to this sort of psychedelic folk sound was really well done. While I do think that the hooks could have been a bit stronger even within the confines of the instrumentals and themes on this record, and sometimes instrumentally it's a bit too barren sometimes, I do think this was a pretty solid project that still had those textured and layered experiences that you come to expect from MGMT. Now, it doesn't immediately hit. You have to really stick with this album to fully appreciate the nuances and the melancholic vibes of the project, but if you do, I think you'll find that this album just showcases that MGMT still has a few surprises left waiting for us. All in all, I'm feeling a decent 8 on this newest album by MGMT. Of course, you still have to talk about album covers on this show, and this album cover is pretty weird, but I also kind of like it. I think it does kind of reflect the sort of nuanced, dark, and sort of numb feeling that is prevalent across this project and in the lyrics and themes. The overall very black color scheme in the middle of this sort of collage effect that they got going on here with the imagery and the colors, how it has just the very blotted out two people on the horse. I think it was pretty cool. It does very much fit the album's vibe and atmosphere. It is fairly design heavy, I find too, so I always appreciate that. This is a pretty cool cover, honestly. But of course, those are just my thoughts on this newest album by MGMT. What did you guys think? Do you think this was a really interesting sort of sidestep for them? Do you think they should honestly explore some of this stuff more? Or were you kind of missing the catchy pop hooks of some of their previous records? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, and I hope you don't die. And until the next one, farewell.